Yep. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to start a whole brand new project from the ground up. So all other code editors, all of the terminals, everything should be closed. Don't want to be working in the wrong place. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a new project. We're going to do a complete setup, install the dependencies we need, set up Redux, just get the project fully ready to go. Set up our GitHub, everything. So we're going to start in our terminal. We go to our front end folder. Everybody should be in the front end folder in the terminal. And I still need a second getting to your front end folder. So, can't stress this enough. Lectures are way more important than final projects. They're still learning. The final project isn't going anywhere. Every final project group has gotten their final projects to a point to presentation on the last day. If you're trying to split your attention between lectures and your final project, then you're only halfway paying attention. Even if there's downtime, while people are being helped, you're still thinking about your final project even while you're trying to follow along. So please just stick to the lecture, one thing at a time. All right, with all that aside, from your front end folder, we are going to clone the React starter again. So we're going to say git clone https:// two forward slashes github.com/learning-fuse/starter.git. And then because we don't want to create a React starter folder, we're going to hit space, and then we're going to give it a different name. And we're going to say Redux-to-do-list. So Redux to-do list. All right. Once you have that, go ahead and hit enter. If you get an error, it would be due to a typo in the URL, most likely. If everything clones properly, then you should go to CD into your newly created folder. So CD Redux to-do list. Anybody still need a second cloning? Everybody good? So you should now be in the folder we just created. So make sure you change directories into the folder we just cloned. And then we're going to run npm install to install everything. While that is installing in the background, we're going to jump to our browser and go to GitHub and create a new repo. So go to your browser, GitHub. And then the top right is the little plus sign and new repository. And then for a repository name, we'll say redux-to-do-list. I already have one by that name, so I can't use that. You guys can keep yours that though. I am just going to add your class number in front of it, C9.18. You do not have to do that. And then we'll give it a brief description of to-do list app built with React.js and Redux.js. All right, so once we've given it a name and a description, those are the only two things we're going to change. We're going to leave everything else alone. We do not want to start with any other files because that will start a Git history. And as some of you might have discovered with your final projects, if you already have an existing repo, you can't just merge another repo into it easily. It says can't merge different Git histories. There are ways around it, of course, but we just want to avoid that altogether. So we want to create a 100% blank repo. So once you got the name and the description, create repository. That should then take us to this page, which is a blank repository page. We're going to copy from the clipboard button, or you can highlight it and copy it, whichever way you prefer. Just going to copy this URL. Anybody need a second to get here? All good? All right, from the terminal, is anybody's npm install still running?
Can I just open a new tab and still do this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, just open a new tab. All right. So now we got to do the thing of where we got to point the repo somewhere different. If we do git remote -v, we can see that we're pointed at the repo we cloned from, which is how it's supposed to work. So there's nothing wrong with that. But we don't want to use that repo anymore. We've created a new repo. We want to go down a different path now. So now we're going to do git remote set -url origin, and then paste in our new repo address. And then hit enter. And it should look like nothing happened. Yes, sir.
I've seen on the Git page it told me I can use git remote add origin. Is there any functional difference?
There's a significant difference. Add is if the repo didn't already have an origin set. So add is to add a new one. And like you don't have to use the word origin. You can think of it like a variable. So you could say like you could use the word remote instead of origin, or you could use bunnies.
So was doing origin overwrite the previous one?
No, it'll throw an error if you already have one. It'll say origin already exists. So add is to create a new one. Set URL is to change an existing one. Yep. All right, and then we always want to verify our work. So git remote -v again. Make sure it works. Never assume anything works. I have never done this and it not worked, but I still do this every time. Even when I'm by myself and do this, I still check it. Never, ever assume. All right. Now that we have that all done, now we need to make some changes to our README and to our package.json. So I'm going to open my code editor to this directory. Is your npm install still going?
Yeah, I'm at like 55%.
Jesus.
It's cool though.
All right, so we'll start with the README first then. Give yours a little more time to complete. So we're gonna go to the README and we're just gonna clean this up a little bit to match what we're doing. So,
1 second, sorry.
Okay, no, you're good. No, thank you for speaking up.
we call it? Oh, it's-
How old is that pizza? Holy crap.
On the pizza.
It's really gods.
Should be still edible.
I think you can still call it food.
Can you?
I'm sure I'll just like say.
Vintage.
It's
I don't think no.
You can use it as a weapon, probably. Like stab somebody with it. So you're good.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So first thing we're gonna do is update the H1 at the top. So from React Starter, we'll say Redux to do list. Update the description to something more fitting. Again, you guys put whatever you want. You don't have to copy word for word what I'm putting. Okay? It doesn't matter. It's not, doesn't affect how the program runs or anything like that. This is just information to somebody that runs across your repo. Okay, so I'm going to say to do list built with React.js and Redux.js. And then we'll update the instructions to match. So for git clone, the repo name is going to be different. So instead, I'm going to delete where it says React Starter. And then you've got to put your repo name in. So I put C9.18 on mine. If you didn't put C9.18 on yours, make sure you do your repo name. If you need to verify what your repo name is, go to GitHub and see what your repo name is. So mine is C9.18-2-do-list. Like I said, yours may be different. Oh, Redux to-do list. I forgot Redux on mine. Redux. All right, and then that will create a different folder than React Starter. So we'll change the folder name to whatever the repo name is. Once again, yours might be different than mine. npm install, npm start, all that stays the same. And then the very last step, it says you should see a page that displays welcome to React. They're not going to see that anymore, so we'll just delete that part. All right, everything else is good enough. You guys are at the stage of your career where you're looking to get a job. Your README should reflect that. You should take time to make your READMEs nice. Okay, it doesn't take very much effort. You know, you spend 20, 30 minutes on each of your READMEs, they can look really good. First one might take a little bit longer while you're learning Markdown, but once you get the hang of it, you should be able to update them pretty nice. Yes, sir.
So if you're adding, like, let's say routing to your application, would you put that in the README too? Like,
Especially as a new developer, I would actually put like technologies used section and then list out all the different technologies used.
okay.
Yeah, definitely a good idea. Yeah, and even in the description, you know, be more descriptive with what you actually used and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm just doing it because I don't want to spend 20 minutes typing a bunch of crap out, but just to show you guys to change it. Good question.
What other stuff do you want us to include on the README?
It really varies on your personal taste, but you should definitely have, you know, some kind of title, a description. Like I said, a section of list of technologies is always good. And then as a learning, you know, new developer, even a little section about, you know, this is what I learned from building this project. This is stuff I hope to add to this project in the future, a section like that. So just anything you could think of. Okay? I would venture to say you probably can't put too much. I might be wrong on that, but I don't think you could. And if you start telling your life story, that might be a bit much. So I take it back. You can't do too much. You can't put too much relevant information. All right, so once you're happy with your README, we'll jump up to the package JSON file. And in package JSON, we'll change the name. As a reminder, the name cannot have spaces in it. I would keep it just all lowercase and use dashes or underscores. So I'm going to call mine Redux -2-do-list. The name of the package does not necessarily have to be the same as the repo name, or not directly related. If you were actually building an NPM package, you'd probably want the repo name to match the package name, but that's not what we're doing, so it doesn't really matter. And then another short description. To-do list. React and Redux. All right, so name, description, and then author. Change that to your name. And then finally, we'll replace the repository URL with our updated one. It should be your username and then your Redux to-do list repo name. And then if you're not using autosave, make sure you save it, because we're about to npm install some more stuff. And if you don't save it and then we npm install stuff, it will cause that weird issue where it says the file's changed on disk and memory and all that fun stuff. All right. Actually, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and push this to master, because that's the base setup. Okay. So we go back to our terminal. Am I leaving anybody behind? Everybody's good, or everyone's with me? I just need a recording that says that every couple minutes. I just hit play on it. It's like a broken record.
Makes sense.
All right, so we'll say git. Actually, before we do git add, because this is the first time, definitely need to do git status. Make sure I am not committing anything that I shouldn't be. README, package JSON, you might have a package-lock file there as well. Apparently mine didn't change. Yours might have. If it did, it's not a big deal. And then we'll do git add.
Wait, you want to add it to master?
Yes, this is the one and only time that you add and commit to master. Good catch, though. You were wrong, but it was a good catch.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
I'm gonna shut up now.
I like to discourage the students to talk.
Really? I'm gonna go back to my shell.
All right, so for the commit message, I'm just going to say init commit, and then push origin master. Like I said, it was very right to point that out. This is the only time that we add commit and push to master. You should never be directly working on your master branch. Like, even if you're working on a project by yourself, you should still be making branches and stuff as you work on different parts of your project. Because not only is it good for working in groups, which is one of the main things gets good about, but it's also good for tracking changes and reverting your code back if you mess up. And not destroying your code by working on master. You can still revert back, but you should do it the proper way. All right, so once I've done that, I've added, committed, and pushed. I'm going to jump back to GitHub, refresh my page, make sure I see all my files show up, see our nice updated README, that's what it's called, README, our updated header, description, updated instructions. Once you verified everything is all good on GitHub, now we're going to create our first branch, and we're just going to call it project setup. So we'll say git checkout -b project setup. All right, so we're going to kind of set up our initial routing stuff. We're going to set up Redux. We'll set up a CSS library, just all the kind of basic setup stuff. So we can just, once we're done with this, we can just start building stuff. So in order to do that, we need to npm install a bunch of things. So we're going to say npm. Everybody good? So npm install -- save. And then what do we need to install? We want routing. What do we need to install?
React
Router DOM. So React Router -DOM. Now don't hit enter because we can actually install multiple packages at once. Just separated by spaces. All right, so React Router DOM. What else do we need? We have Redux already.
Oh.
Good call though. So we already have Redux. We have routing. What else do we need? Axios. Okay, we need to be able to call a server. We need to call the to-do list API. All right, what else? What about styling? So we need to install a CSS library. I say we stick with Materialize, unless a lot of you guys want to use Bootstrap. All right, Materialize has it. Materialize -CSS. Has anybody? You guys probably haven't done enough stuff, but I guarantee pretty much everybody in here, if you keep using Materialize, at some point you're going to install just Materialize, not the -CSS one. Be very disappointed. It's like some library that like merges objects together. It does some really simple thing. It's like one file that's a couple lines of code. It's like, what the fuck is that? As in, I've done it more than once, even. All right, so we got routing. We have network requests with Axios. We have styling with Materialize. Anything else that you guys can think of that we might need?
Dealing with the server.
Has the link.
What's up?
The link components, or is that already included?
That's in React.
That's React Router. Good thinking, though. I think that'll be enough to get us started.
What else we should normally add?
Huh?
What else we should normally add?
That's about it.
Yeah.
But if we were doing a back end, we're not doing a back end.
Yeah.
So. And it would be, and we would install that separate in a separate package JSON file.
All right.
Yeah. So there is one other thing that we were going to need to install that I could think of right off the top of my head, but we'll wait till we get to it, and that'll be Redux Form, which is actually what this whole lesson's on. But I want to wait till we get to that one, and we'll install that one separately. But I can't even think of anything else right now. That doesn't mean we didn't forget something though. But if we forgot something, all we gotta do is jump back to the terminal and install it. It's not the end of the world. So enter. That'll run. That'll install all your stuff. As a side note, we could have ran this command first before we ran. When we ran npm install at the very beginning, we could have chained all this other stuff on there. If you haven't already installed all your other dependencies, it would install them. Okay? Every time you run the npm install command, it always checks your package JSON file. And it makes sure it checks everything's installed, and it also checks for new minor version updates.
Does where the --save is matter, or could it be like at the end of everything else still do the same thing?
You can put it at the end.
So in npm is gonna check on your dependencies, install package as well if they
Yep. Yep, it check every time you run npm install, it checks for vulnerabilities, checks for any updates. I said it checks only for minor version updates. And quick lesson on versioning. This isn't, I mean, it's important, but not super important right now, but I'll give you a crash course. The first number is a major version. If this version number changes, the very first number, that means it has breaking changes from the previous version. So if you're running version 6 and you want to upgrade to 7, you got to be very careful because from 6 to 7, the internal workings of whatever you're using has changed. So your code that was using 6 might not work with 7. That is a major version update. When there's breaking changes, it is a major version update. The second one is a minor version update. That means usually just bug fixes, sometimes even adding small features and stuff like that, but it doesn't break how the code works. It doesn't change how the actual code runs. And then I actually don't even really know the huge difference between that. I mean, I guess that's a super minor update. I'm sure there's a more technical term for it. But most importantly that you need to worry about is the major and minor version number changes. This little caret tells npm to use the highest version of, in this case, version 16. For React Redux, use the highest version of 7 that's available. So let's say, or 5. Let's say 5.1 came out and I ran npm install. npm would actually install 5.1. Okay? Even if it originally installed 5.0.7, but then I npm installed Axios, a week later, if it'll check and if this minor version number changed, then it'll update it for us. So npm keeps everything up to date for you.
Sorry, so just making sure. So that means that it would update to the most recent version of 5, but it would not update you to 6.
Yeah, so if 6 came out, it wouldn't install 6.
Okay.
Yeah. Because once again, the major version changes are breaking changes, so it could break your code if it did.
Okay.
So on our for like a project, if we start using something else like Materialize, and then it wasn't there when we first created the repo and everything, and each one of us is then installing Materialize.
Only one of you should be installing it. One person. So whenever you go to add a new library to any project, one person should do it. Update your dev branch, whatever major branch you're working off, master or dev. And then when everybody pulls your updates, they then run npm install, and it'll add to their version any libraries that have been installed. Because when you install it, it'll add it to here. So then when they pull the updates, it'll update their package.json file. Then when they type npm install, it'll check for any missing packages and add them in.
Does it create any sort of problem?
You could create merge conflicts in your package.json file if you all do it at the same time.
Would you mind repeating one more time what Aaron just said about that it will not allow you to?
Yeah, so let's say for React Redux, let's say version 6 is out. So when I npm install it, it will not install version 6. It might install a higher version of 5 that's here, but it will never jump to the major version.
So npm install has that like safety built into it?
Well, yeah, that's what this little caret means. It means install the highest version of 5. Okay? Because once again, major version changes can break your code. They don't always break your code, but because you might not be using whatever they changed, but somewhere in their code, it's a breaking change. That's what determines the major version changes. All right, little side lesson on version numbers. All right, so first thing we want to do is set up Redux. So we have Redux installed. What is the next thing that we always do when we're setting up Redux? Dig deep. I know you guys can do it.
2 folders.
Folders, files and folders. Okay, what's one of the folder names we need to create? Actions. Type files inside of actions.
Yeah.
So we make an actions folder
In source, right?
directly inside a source. Yeah. All right. As I mentioned before, I create stuff in the order that I can import it. So inside of actions, I'm going to create the types file first. I'll show you why as we do it. So inside of actions, new file, types.js. And I'm going to go ahead and set this file up. We didn't do this the first time, but this is the way I actually normally do it. So I'm going to go ahead and say export default an empty object. Okay, so it's set up and ready to go. I don't know any of my types yet, but the exporting and the object is there, so I can just start adding types in. And because I'm going to import stuff from this file, I don't want it to break. So since now that I'm actually physically exporting something, it won't break when it runs. All right, the second file inside of the actions folder is what? Index. If you're ever unsure of a file name, and I ask, just guess index. Usually it's going to be right. All right. The only thing we're going to do in here is we're going to import that types object we just created. So we're going to say import types from this directory types. All right, so that's it for our actions folder. What is the other folder we create? Reducers. So once again, directly inside of SRC, create a new folder, and that one will be reducers. And then we are building a to-do list app, so we probably need a list reducer. So we'll say list underscore reducer.js. All right, a reducer, we always start by importing our types object. Types from, oops, back a directory, actions, types file. All right, what's the next thing we do in a reducer? Reach deep. Right? You guys know. The reducer itself is a function, but before that, there's one more thing we do before we make the function. The default state. So I'm going to say const default underscore state equals object. All right. Normally when you have a to-do list, you want to view all of your items. So I'm going to add a property in here that is all. Set it to an empty array because that's the data that it'll be when you have a when you have all of your to-do items. They are stored in an array. So I'm just going to set a default value for that. And then we are also going to have a page where we can view a single to-do item. So I will add single. And I'm going to set that one by what is a to-do list item by itself? What data type? An object. So we'll just set it to an empty object. And then, now I know this because I've built this 9,000 times, but let's say I'm just guessing that's what we need, okay? If I'm wrong, who cares? We'll come back and change it. Nothing's set in stone. Okay, so just because we set it up that way doesn't mean if, as we're building the app out, it decides, you know, hey, that was kind of a bad way to set it up, which happens more often than not. You'll think you're going down a good path and realize, oh, that probably wasn't the best way to handle it. You can change it. It's the beauty of code. Nothing is permanent. All right. Now we need to make the reducer itself, which is a function. So we'll just directly export it. So we'll say export default. And then the reducer itself is just a function. So we'll make a function. Function body. How many parameters does a reducer function fit? 2. What's the first one? State. What's the second one? Action. You're learning. You're learning. It's working.
Stop state.
And then, yes, then we're going to, just in case state is undefined, we want it to be set to what our default state. Yeah. If you hold shift and do that, it does that. All right. Inside the reducer, what's inside of a reducer function? A switch statement, yes. Be confident in your answers. Even if they're wrong, be confidently wrong. All right, what do we base the switch statement off of?
Action type.
The action type. So action, which is an object, and we check the type property. And because we don't really know what any of our types are going to be yet, we haven't defined any types, we always start with just doing a default and returning state unchanged.
Scott,
Yes.
what's the, I'm pretty sure you mentioned this before, but what's the purpose of just returning the same thing, like on the default?
Because you're going to have action types, because all actions go through all the reducers. So you're always going to have actions running through these functions where you don't want it to change anything here. So you don't want it to change anything, so you're just returning it unchanged.
Okay.
So if it doesn't match any of the cases, you don't want the state to change. That was actually a good question.
Similarly, then if it isn't the action type, then wouldn't it just skip default anyway and then now return state? Isn't not changing state the same thing as returning stuff?
Well, you still have to return something, and you have to return state. So whatever's returned from this function is what that new piece of state will be. So if you didn't return it, then that piece of state would become undefined because what does a function return if you don't return anything?
Okay.
Functions always return something. Even if it's undefined, they still return something. All functions run to the end. That's actually going to be important down the road. And I've seen other people where they'll have like their different cases. You know, whatever. And then instead of adding default, they'll just do return state here, which will work the same way. It doesn't really matter. I don't like doing it that way because like when you first set it up, you don't have any cases. It's kind of weird. It doesn't really work. So, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, if it doesn't change, you can return state however you want. All right. Everybody go with their list reducer? All set? So the next thing we gotta do is we gotta set up our root reducer. And that goes in a file called what? Index. All right, we have to import a little helper from the Redux library. A function that takes all of our reducers and turns it into one reducer. Does anybody remember the name of that function?
To create another file?
Combine reducers. What was that, Sasha? Sorry.
Create another file, right?
Yep, index.js inside of the reducers folder. So if you write out the whole import statement first, you can see as soon as I start typing, I can see combine reducers right there. All right, then we need to import all the reducers that we made. In this case, it's only just the one. So we're going to say import list reducer from this directory, list reducer. And then we're going to build our root reducer. And the root reducer is built from calling combine reducers, the function that we call, and then we pass in an object that essentially describes how we want our state to look. So we want list set to list reducer. And then finally, we need to export default our root reducer. And then as was demonstrated earlier, if you add reducers, you just make new reducer files and then just add them here. And that connects everything together. Anybody need a second? All right. And then the final step is our index.js. Now we set up Redux. Now we just need to connect it all into our React project. But while we're here, we're also going to set up our routing because we do the routing in the same place. So I'm going to import curly brackets from React router DOM first. And then I'm going to use browser router. Really watch your spelling on that one if you didn't use autocomplete. That's an easy one to typo. And then we'll rename browser router as router. And then we need to import the component from React Redux. Do we remember, anybody remember the name of the component that supplies all the information to our React app? Nope. Close. React is what connects everything together. But what's the one that wraps around our app, giving all of the data to our app? Provider. There it is. It provides all the information. I think of it as like a parent figure. It is the provider. So capital P. There it is, provider.
Wait, what's the difference between provider and connect?
So provider is a component that everything inside of it has access to the Redux state.
Okay.
Connect is what makes the actual connection so you can access the Redux state and update the state and everything like that. Connect gives you access to it. Provider is what gives the whole application everything. The provider must come before connect. All right, then we need to import a helper function from Redux itself. The one that actually builds the store. Anybody remember what that one's called?
Create store.
Create store. then finally, we need to import our root reducer from this directory, reducers. Once we got all of our imports done, next thing we need to do is create the store itself. So const store equals create store. As it stands right this second, create store takes one argument. That one argument is our root reducer. I will tell you now, that is a lie and a false sense of security. Create store takes more arguments. But for now, it takes one. And then finally, just need to bring it all together. So inside a render, remember, render is a method, takes two arguments. Watch your comma. So I'm going to highlight app. I'm going to cut app. I'm going to put in provider. Inside a provider, I'm going to put router. And inside a router, I'm going to put app. Notice, provider and everything inside of it is the first argument of render. So after provider is the comma, and then the second argument is document.getElementById. And then the very last thing we need to do. Everybody with me? Everybody watching? So the very last thing we need to do is add the store prop onto provider. Store equals curly brackets store. All right, now our app is set up with Redux and routing. Now we'll start our servers and debug any issues we have before we go any further. So if your server's not running already, npm start. Make sure you're in the right directory. You should be in your Redux to-do list folder. Once it's compiled, browser, localhost 3000. And if all went well, you should see this. One second. You should see this and nothing in your console. Yes.
Is this npm started, right?
Yes.
Mine got a listen error.
That means you have another server running.
I don't.
It might be in the background.
And maybe some LAMP server can be there.
Not unless it's on 3000.
Those are the only two terminals.
Okay. So what you can do is do control delete and go to task manager. And then go to, I think, more details. Changing it on me. All right, and then scroll down until you find node. Oh, right there. Click on that one, and then stop it in task. There you go. And then now you should be able to do it. Yeah, Windows does that sometimes. It doesn't close it all the way.
I
Even when
think
you
I
stop
started
it.
a couple weeks ago.
It's very too much food.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
You can start fast.
No, not fast enough.
Well, that's really browser router.
Like routers.
It's honestly really talented. I've never been able to do it.
Like I wish I could jump like that.
Even like passing on a bunch of apps or something, like, just really stupid stuff.
Oh, you go sleep on your
Just
red.
like,
Check.
Do you get like tired though when you feel like you're passed out sitting? Yeah.
yeah, but obviously if I do this and I like immediately go up, I just can't do it.
Oh, wait, that's important. Yeah.
No, it's
Get a little fat right there. You're like,
Some
brown fat is skin on your neck.
No direction.
Oh, game Redux.
Art? I'd rather.
These, like, these make you like, actually, go
So that is like,
yeah, you like experience and sleep.
Watch your lines, guys.
I was like catching a little bit.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Almost through.
Maybe like lob it more, go higher up, lob, like higher up, lob. That was cute. That was cute.
I like how your monitors are like touching.
Oh, docking.
Right. Right.
Sorry.
It bounced off your
I
eye.
have to like go back.
One step away. So please, or you
How do you?
I point a gun at him and shoot them. Grab him double shaft.
Oh, good. Good.
Good, like,
Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else?
Actually, mine just filled. Mine just.
Everyone's good?
No, it's got.
It's gonna take a minute.
Mine just, it finally started to compile, but it just failed.
Finally started.
I didn't get this from you.
Export. Is that the type file?
Yeah.
Export key file. Bing, bada, boom. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, come here.
That's gonna get weird.
All right. So everybody's app is working, right? Promise?
Sasha? Yes.
Surprisingly,
Hey, every time I do this and it works the first time, I'm still surprised. Every time. Like I've done it enough time that it usually works more often than it doesn't, but I'm still surprised when it does. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and add commit and push and then merge this to our master branch so we can start on our next adventure. So you can either open a new tab, you can stop your server, however you want to handle it. You're becoming grown-up developers now. Start making some decisions on your own. Always do a git status check first, which I'm sure almost none of you did.
Wrong.
I said almost. I said almost. I figured there might have been one or two of you that did. All right, so git add, git commit dash m, and we'll say, oh no, we didn't finish. We didn't finish. That's okay. We can still say completed.
We actually do.
Setting up Redux and routing. And we're gonna do one more thing before we merge it. You can still add and commit though. Get extra cleaned up. You can actually just say anything you want. They don't have to do what I type.
Yeah, there's not much in my head right
There's not much of it.
There's more than you're giving it credit for.
Good response.
Git commit dash m.
All right, so once we add and committed, I forgot there was a little bit more setup I wanted to do, so we'll go ahead and do that. Then we'll add, commit, push again, and then we'll merge it to master, and then we'll take a break. Everybody good? Everybody with me? All right, so let's jump over to components, jump over to app.js. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to delete the import of the logo and import of app CSS. We're not going to use those. We are, however, going to import the materialized CSS and the materialized JavaScript. So we'll say import materialized CSS /dist/CSS. Wow, even in the little drop down, the folders were styled. I never noticed that before. /materialize.min.css.
Why is it a dist folder? Why do you do the folder?
Because everybody puts stuff in the dist folder. Short for distribution. That's where like your completed code goes.
Oh.
Notice we have a dist folder too.
Yeah.
That's where your completed website goes.
Yes, that's not just CSS.
It's not, I didn't just make up the dist folder here.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. All right, and then we will also import from materialize-css /dist/JavaScript/materialize. All right, that will import all the CSS and all the JavaScript for materialize into our project. One side note about using like the materialized JavaScript, you gotta remember, materialized JavaScript is manipulating the DOM, and it's manipulating the DOM without React knowing. So you can potentially run into any issues. Now, I haven't run into any major issues because of that, but it is a possibility because you're making changes to what the user's seeing without React necessarily being aware of it. So there is a little bit risk. I'm not saying that to scare you because I use it. Like I haven't run into any serious issues with it. But you should be aware of what you're doing. All right. I'm going to delete everything inside of the div here. I am going to add a class name of container. And just for a placeholder at the moment, I'm going to add an H1 with the class of center. And I'm going to say to do this. And just to be cheesy, I'm going to add a p tag underneath with a class of center and a class of gray-text. And then I'm going to say now with Redux. Because it'll be super cute.
I thought you were gonna
We need to do a soft.
hello world for a second.
Whoa, bro. That's too far. I was thinking someone should make a book about like the first AI and call it Hello World. Right? Dude, I just thought of that today earlier.
Uh-oh. Make money on that.
All right, so let's see if Materialize is working and beautiful.
Now with context.
Don't worry about pushing your context propaganda.
Mine is not showing up.
They should fix that.
Uncut typer, object release function, something.
If you need, you tested it before, right?
Those are sloppy.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like it.
It was.
Need help? Just let me know. Anybody having trouble? Need help? All right, I'll give everybody a second to. I said no. All right, so just a minute.
I want to move all these things.
Okay, so highlight it, and then hit that. You don't even have to do that much. Just highlight pretty much every line like that. That's fine.
Really?
And then hit shift tab.
Say, hey.
Shift.
Because you get all the good
There you
stuff.
go.
Always do something
Yeah, that's
else.
the
It is
problem. Like,
anything. And
it was like easy.
you know, it's when you have this much,
Yeah.
and you just pass it over.
Man, years of practice. Years of practice.
Yeah, but
There's no research.
it breaks all the time.
Okay, I'll be right back.
There's always oriented like that. They'll trigger my tea bag.
Yeah.
That's strong.
It's like really like, I like
Yeah, it's not.
Oh yeah, so go to app.
That way it kind of works with the inside that thing. I don't know what you call that.
Saved it, right?
Yeah.
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just try refreshing it again.
I think for some reason, that
Oh.
second like Spain.
The auto save just caught it somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone else have their hand up?
Yeah, it's like.
I never saw it before you. You guys got it? or-
Yeah, that just like really heavy.
Yeah, it's just for the reason it doesn't come up here.
Yeah.
Yes. That's my only.
But there's no battle.
Is everybody
Extra
I think it's not bad.
extra not make sure
All right, guys, a couple more minutes and we're taking a break. Where do we go?
It's very like bouncy.
Everybody good?
My code is on.
It's okay.
All right, all we're doing, okay, so you should have, everything should be working. You should have your header No errors in the console. Everybody has this, right? All right. So now we're going to add commit and push, and now we're going to merge it to master. So get status. Just change the app.js file, so it looks good. Git add, git -m, and we'll say setup materialize. And then I'll do git push origin project setup. And then because it's the first push, we get this nice pull request URL, which is very handy. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that URL. Why do you do that to me? Copy, and then paste that into our browser.
So when will this whole setup process actually start making sense to us?
I don't know, probably after 20 or 30 times. I had taught it, built a couple of personal projects in it, and the first 3 or 4 classes, I still have to have notes and stuff on all this. Like if I didn't teach it, I don't even know that I would know it off the top of my head. It's a lot to remember. At this point, I don't think I could ever forget it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to remember. What was I doing? Oh, yeah, we were merging. Thank you. All right, so we're going to take project setup into master. I'm going to add a little bit more to my message here. So project setup complete, a whole bunch more. Create the pull request. Go to files changed. Do a quick skim through. Make sure nothing crazy. Looks good. And then merge pull request, confirm merge. And then once it's merged, delete the branch. All right, once you're all up to date on GitHub, we need to update locally. So we'll switch back to our terminal, switch to master, git pull origin master. We have to do -u when we push it initially. All right. And once we've pulled and updated our master, we could delete our local version of project setup. So I'm going to say git branch -d project setup. And then I got the message, deleted branch. So now we're on our master. Our code's all nice and updated. Should be right where we left off. Go ahead and take a break. And then when we come back, we will connect to the API to get our to-do list. And then we'll finally make it to Redux form.
Questions?
No questions. But your question
is about on the real project, we supposed to delete branches when they're done.
Definitely.